Today on The Life of Bryony, we're telling a powerful story about escaping from violence, drug abuse, and the patriarchy. Keeley Hazell shot to stardom as a page 3 girl, but in the intervening years, she's been writing her own story as an actress and a writer on Ted Lasso. She joins me today to talk frankly about her new book of essays, Everyone's Seen My Tits, and how she's managed to reclaim her own narrative. So let's talk about you as a teenager. You were smoking cocaine at 13. Is that,
I think they'd call it crack. But
Crack, yeah, okay.
Yes, I went wild.
Yeah, wild.
I was nuts. I would set fire to things when somebody was like, hey, you want to smoke this cocaine? And I was like, yeah. There was a straw, and then someone was like, oh, it's crack. And I was like, oh, I guess they smoked crack.
My chat with Keeley Hazell right after this. Keeley Hazell, Everyone's Seen My Tits. I mean, what a name for a book. I feel like everyone's going to think this is a celebrity memoir about being a page 3 girl, about being witness to England footballers getting beaten up, all of that. But I've read it, and it's so much more than that. I feel like it's a book about cycle breaking, escaping violence, actually, about healing. And that sounds really cheesy, but I love cheese, so it's okay.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, it's funny, I do think people are going to go to it thinking that it is this juicy kind of tell-all, and then you'll read it and you'll be so vastly disappointed.
I don't know, Keeley. I think there are some, I think you've gone there, but I think it's not about the things people would expect.
I feel like the fame element to me is so uninteresting because I don't necessarily see myself that way. And also there's so many other people that can tell that story about what it's like to be so uber famous. But yeah, I think that ultimately, for me, it was a book about class.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the theme that runs throughout. And then there's also, there is breaking cycles. It's about my relationship with men, starting with my dad and my relationships with other men and trying to get out of those patterns that keep us stuck in
pain.
In pain, yeah.
So can we, I was going to say it's about about subverting people's expectations of you, but also about you subverting your expectations of yourself. Like, I feel it is about class, but it's also about you saying, it's about you working out who you are. There's this really fantastic quote about fame in it where you say, when you're in the thick of it as a page 3 girl in the noughties and you're all over the front pages of the newspapers, and you say it's hard not to be resentful when the world values superficiality above everything else. But fame isn't about you. It's about what other people think of you, which I thought was so fantastic. And I feel like this book is about you kind of explaining who you've worked out you are post all of that.
Yes. Yeah, 2 things on that. It's interesting. There's an essay or a chapter in there called Differences. And it's about, me and this sort of transformation of being 12 and then going on 13. And I think once I finished that, I was like, oh, this is the whole entire book is me figuring out sort of who I am. And then in so many ways coming back to this 12-year-old girl. Like I had this moment where I was like, oh, I didn't know that I was returning to this girl that I sort of left behind, because everything when I turned 13 changed. And then throughout my teenage years, it's the page 3. And it was like, oh, wow. And then on the fame stuff, that also like figuring that out in my teenage years of realizing this isn't my popularity or anybody's popularity for that matter, if they're in the public eye, isn't about them. It's about the interpretation of what other people think they are and see in them. And so that's really difficult when you see yourself so differently than how other people perceive you to be. And then when you know that they value something else. And coming to terms with that. For me, it's like, I know that I'm going to get more views, or I am going to be popular if I am presented in a certain way sexually. And yet maybe that doesn't align with who I am, but that's what people want and that's what people respond to. And that's the version of me that people like.
Can we go back to that 12-year-old girl, or even younger than that? Can we go back to your childhood?
For sure.
For sure.
I've spent a lot of time there, but let's go back.
Well, no, I mean, like in a non-traumatic way. Because it was extraordinarily violent, would you say?
I mean, I would say extraordinary seems quite extreme.
A big word.
It seems like a big word, because I also think my childhood wasn't so different
to anyone else's.
And not anyone else's. I think people grow up in homes where there isn't violence present, but also in the time in which I grew up and the generations before that. I think that this is sort of like how everybody.
Quite normalised.
It was quite normalised.
But that said as well, I think when we're children, it's normal for us, right? It's only when we get older that we can see that we grew up in some sort of dysfunction. So can we talk about what that what your normal was? You had it was normal for if your mum spoke out of turn or did something out of turn, she'd get a bit of a slap.
Yes. Yeah, I write this in the book, that it's something that was passed down, or how men spoke to each other, of like, oh, your wife does this, you just knock about a bit. And I think that was such an attitude of generations prior, and something that was instilled into my dad in a way that was the only way he sort of knew how to control the situation. And so much of that for me, I think, is just the breakdown of the inability to process emotions. It's like when you grow up not knowing how to deal with how you feel, and society isn't telling you, don't learn that stuff in school, you kind of find these, and hopefully there's an excuse for my dad's behavior, but I think it gives some sort of insight into the way in which he learned to operate. And many men do.
There's an extraordinary, I use the word extraordinary again, but there's a lot of empathy, which I think this is what is so unique and wonderful about your book, is that these things are, there's a lot of, I sense quite a lot of forgiveness, like you've done a lot of work on yourself, right? And then there's going to be a lot of people listening who will have grown up in violent households where it was normalized. And you write something, which I'm going to just read back bits of your book to you, which is kind of like, you may find deeply annoying, but because this, I think, is something that will chime with a lot of people. And you say, what's tricky growing up with a father like mine is that you can hate them for being abusive. You can fantasize about having a different father, but you can still really love them and enjoy spending time with them. It's a complete mind fuck, one that will take you 20 years of therapy to unpack.
Yeah, still talking about in therapy now. I think I want to go back to what you said about forgiveness, because I always say I think forgiveness is overrated. And so for me, I think a lot of it is acceptance.
Right.
And so I look at my father, and I think the way in which my brain works is to see his circumstances. And same with my mother. It's like, this is how they grew up. So I always think about that. And I think I've come to accept the individuals as they are, my parents or others around me, versus forgive. I think forgiveness is a harder one.
Do you speak to your dad?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's complicated. The hardest thing to write about was my father in the book. And it was the thing I didn't know if I wanted to. Going in, I was like, I just don't know how to approach this. And also it's so nuanced. And it is exactly what you just reread to me. Those feelings are present. It's not, this is a violent man. It's like, no, my dad, if he was here now, is like, great, he's funny, and he has so much to offer. So it's not black and white. And those feelings you have for a parent or a lover or an individual can be so mixed. Love and hate can be so intertwined.
What I want to ask you is, because it's a bit, talking about this stuff is like heavy. Writing about it is heavy. So I want to just check in with you and be like, how do you feel? Because we've only just met and I'm sitting down and like asking you about your childhood, and I'm not your therapist and I'm not a therapist.
And I'm sitting on a sofa. It's like I'm in therapy and I'm cheating on my therapist.
Yeah. No, so I want to just check in and go, how does it feel like under bright lights and on a camera, like talking about this stuff? Because it's weird, right?
I think it's weird. And then also for me, you know, the family stuff, and I've been in therapy for so long that I am at a place now where sometimes I'm just like so open about it. Like I can speak about these things very easily just for the nature of doing it for so long. But it is, I think the relationship with my father is complicated and I love him, and also think that he's done some dreadful things. And also my parents are still alive, they exist, they have lives. And while I have been so open with my story and I'm happy to share, I do realize the effect that has on those individuals and the way they exist in the world.
So just to paint a picture. So you grew up in South London.
Yeah.
Not Bromley. That's where you said you were from when you applied to Page 3 Idol.
Yes. Was born in Lewisham, grew up in between Catford and Grove Park. So Catford, lived in a council flat. Then we moved to around the corner to an estate. Yeah, incredibly working class.
And your parents broke up when you were quite, were you, how old were you when they?
I was 13.
Okay, right. So let's talk about you as a teenager. You were setting fire to things. You were smoking cocaine at 13. Is that,
I think they call it crack. But
crack, yeah, okay. Just casually.
Yeah. Yes, I went wild.
Yeah, wild.
I was nuts. It was almost like, and I think this happens for teenagers. Because their brain isn't fully developed and they have no fear. And I was so curious and wanted to try and do everything. And so I would set fire to things. And when somebody was like, hey, you want to smoke this cocaine? And I was like, yeah, there was a straw. And then someone was like, oh, it's crack. And I was like, oh, I guess I smoked crack. So I just was trying to do everything. I was so curious. And I say this all about drugs because I took so many drugs at such a young age that when I got to be 18 and people started taking drugs, I was like, oh, I've done them all. And I did them all, but pretty much I'd say heroin because we're scared of needles, which was what I'd say then at 13. Like I'll try everything, but heroin because I don't want. But if you were to smoke it with the foil, then I would have.
Okay, right. I mean, because this is, you know, again, it's like, but you describe yourself later in the book as being an addict for different reasons, and we'll get on to that because I think that's really important. But it's amazing how you had this sort of crazy thing, but I mean, frankly, reading it, I was like, wow, it's amazing you're alive. It's like looking at you again. This is about subverting expectations, isn't it? And it's like, we never know what's going on for people or what's going on behind the kind of surface, you know. But yeah, I was reading it going, wow. I mean, I've had quite a wild past as well, but I probably waited till I waited till quite late until I took cocaine. I was like 23.
Okay, yeah, that feels.
But you've got it all out of your system by then.
Got it all out of my system. I mean, I was still probably popping pills at 23, but that was like the last time I did it for a very long time. But yeah, I'd you know, I dated drug dealers, so I had access to drugs. And somehow I knew so many drug dealers even before I dated them. So there was access, and I took my first ecstasy tablet when I was 13 years old.
Right.
And smoked a joint when I was 12. And so by the time I got into my 20s, when everybody was trying drugs, it was like, oh, I've been, at 16, I was doing like railing lines of blow all the time.
Yeah. And you were, as you say, you were dating drug dealers, and like working with them, like weighing out the cocaine.
which I really loved.
What was it about it? Was it relaxing?
There's something about it that just, I think it's like the cash and the drugs and like the actual precision of putting it in and then putting it into it. I don't know why.
Something quite methodical, meditative about it.
Yes, 100%.
And actually, you know, and it sounds like your brain was very like boom, boom, you know, like there was a lot going on. So I imagine in that moment, weighing the drugs, packaging it up, there was a kind of calm.
Yes,
sure. Was there fear? Were you ever aware that this was like, that there was a danger that you might get arrested, that you might get, I don't know, like die?
No. I have so much fear now as an adult, but at that age, I just don't think it developed.
Okay.
And I was fearless and there was no thinking about, and in some ways I do think that if I had, that might have been an exciting prospect in some weird way. Like the idea of you could get caught.
Right.
And there was one time, and this isn't in the book, but with one of my drug dealer boyfriends who gave me a whole bag of cocaine, and I took it to a pub in Bromley and I think I sold a couple wraps. And just knowing the amount of drugs I had on me and thinking, well, I could, but there's just like it
was a thrill.
There's a thrill. There was a thrill of, like I was primed to be one of those, like a person that strapped drugs to them.
And gets caught.
And was like lauded through an airport. Like that would have been something, I'd have been like, yeah,
like
totally.
the Peru 2 or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not what happened to you, Keeley. I mean, this is what is so astonishing about your story, is that you're sitting here, you've written a book that's incredibly articulate, incredibly moving, incredibly funny. You went on to become a page 3 girl, right? So you escaped that violent and, you know, and dangerous childhood to become a page 3 girl, and then you escaped that again. You know, we'll go there. Like I feel like I'm like jumping ahead of myself, but you know, to live a life where you're reading Susan Sontag, you're doing therapy, you're quote unquote bettering yourself. And I hate that phrase because I think it's deeply fucking patronizing. But, you know, that didn't happen to you, you know, and it's astonishing that you're sitting here and you're talking about it with such candor. I think it's just amazing. And I'm really grateful to you for doing it, because if we don't talk about this shit and we just gloss over our lives, I don't know, we don't learn anything, do we?
No. And I think also we're so used to that with Instagram and social media, is these curated lives and these curated narratives that people put out there. And so I do think, for me, the just being authentic and honest with the experience is the best way. It's like, I, used to take drugs. It's like, but I don't anymore.
Yeah.
And hopefully now in society, there is an allowance for people to make, and I think I'm fortunate in that I've been allowed to make those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about page 3?
Yes.
Which was like an escape for you, wasn't it? It was, you could have been anything. It could have been a reality TV show. It just so happened that at that time, page 3 was the thing. Because I also had to remind myself about the very existence of page 3.
I know, isn't it nuts?
It's so, can we talk about it?
So crazy.
So there was, it used to be that on page 3 of the Sun newspaper, there would just be a woman with her tits out.
Yes, from the 70s.
From the 70s. And they ran a competition called Page 3 Idol.
Yeah.
And you entered it.
I did.
And you won it.
And I won that competition to be the Page 3 Idol of the Year.
And you were quite ashamed at the time.
Yes. Yeah, deeply. And which was really difficult because I felt like I couldn't, everybody was so proud of it. A lot of the girls were really proud to do page 3. And for me, I was like, oh God, I'm so ashamed and I feel so embarrassed.
But you were really young.
I was 18.
I mean,
which was 20 years ago.
So, but you were saying that in the 70s, there used to be 16-year-old girls with their tits out on the page 3 of The Sun. And, and when it was stopped, so it was, how long ago is it now that page 3 was stopped? So it was like 15 years
Maybe
ago?
10 years ago. I think it was 2015,
and it
if
was,
I'm correct.
Yeah, so nearly 10 years ago. And it was, I remember at the time, it was like, this is a sign of progression, that we are becoming a more unequal society. And actually, now I look back on it, page 3 seems kind of quite quaint and traditional compared to some of the shit out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does seem tame in hindsight, but also when I look back at it and I just think, well, this is clearly a crazy concept, obviously invented by a man. And what? There were 16-year-old girls just topless in a what? This is
in the newspaper, but it was a big thing.
It was a big thing.
You sold a lot of newspapers.
I sold newspapers for being semi-naked.
There's probably a lot of newspapers who wish that they could bring it back to get the sales up.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, put tits in there and those sales skyrocket.
But so you sent off your photos. I mean, this is how long ago it was.
Yes, I mailed them. That's how long ago. And so my boyfriend at the time took some pictures. I had to go get them printed out in like Boots or Snappy Snaps. And then I put them in an envelope and sent them off to The Sun. And remember putting them into the mailbox and then being like, oh God, what have I done? And putting my hand in to try and get them back out, and then just standing there panicked. Like, I've just put topless photos of myself in an envelope and sent them in the royal mailbox.
You got through, and and it completely changed your life.
Yes. Yeah.
Suddenly you have money.
Yes.
Which was a big thing.
A big thing. Huge.
And enables you to not care so much about this thing that you feel slightly ashamed of, right?
Yes. I think it was weighing up those two things, because the money for me was the whole reason to do it. It was making the money. And just that struggle, like the difference of being able to like get a taxi or go out for like a dinner was just so great. And so that was just so wonderful, and just all of the doors that it opened up and the opportunities because of having money weighed up against me doing something that I didn't necessarily want to do. And then also felt conflicted because I felt like I should be proud. And The Sun very much, kind of push this narrative onto us that is like, well, you're a page 3 girl. This is like the greatest thing that's ever happened to anybody. And it's like, I don't know if I like really want to like be doing this with my life, or like I feel kind of ashamed, and yet I'm being told that I shouldn't be, and that.
But all the messages you were getting given by society were that you should be ashamed. I mean, there's an amazing bit in the book where you're shooting something for Zoo magazine, which was a sort of, it was like page 3, but weekly, you know, and it was like a lads mag. And they've got in this very high brow photographer, Rankin, to take the shoot, but he's only agreed to do it as long as his name isn't in the magazine. So it's the kind of anonymous shoot. And you're standing there with Coca-Cola bottles to try and get your nipples hard.
Yes.
What a vision.
Me just with 2 Coke bottles.
That was a kind of a normal thing for you, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah, which is very weird. I think I was very numb emotionally in those moments of just, be like me here now, just like kind of standing with my boobs out, and then like and it not being normal, but also trying to normalize it for the sake of it not being awkward and weird.
You had to be numb.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I could process how I was feeling, because also in those moments, it's like, this is how I make money and there's no real alternative. It didn't feel like to me that there was other options. It was like, it's this, or, I go work back at the hair salon and I make £100 a week or something. And that's like, it's those two things. It didn't feel like there was other alternatives in between that.
So you're catapulted into this world where you're going to, I mean, it really took me back to the noughties. You're going to China Whites, you're going to all these nightclubs, you're hanging out with England footballers, but you are in a really abusive relationship.
Yes.
With a guy who I'm assuming named Theo in the book. Yeah. So you'd known Theo since you were 13. He was very much part of your wild, feral childhood. And he was a drug dealer.
Yes.
Was he a drug dealer?
It's unsure. I'm very unsure about what he did.
He wasn't an accountant.
He didn't go to an office, and
he was an asshole, actually, is what he was, yes. Keeley. And, as you say, a lot of this book, I mean, there is a chapter called Daddy Issues, an essay. I mean, it's a series of essays, isn't it, really, about daddy issues. And, it's about you sort of finding yourself, without even realizing it, repeating this sort of relationship pattern that you saw when you were a child between your mother and father, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's obviously those like mirror neurons reflecting in me being attracted to the very thing. And I guess if I look into it and therapize myself right now, it's me trying to get love from somebody that represents and is in many ways like my father. And being attracted to that and still trying to get that love from this, and not really realizing at the time I didn't know, I hadn't put those things together to be like, oh, this man's kind of a version of my father.
Yeah. So but this is stuff we all learn and we have to go through it. And I felt for you as I was reading it. I had a similarly abusive relationship in my early 20s, and not the sort of that being trapped, being sort of stuck. There's a scene, and you pepper everything with a lot of humour, Keeley. So you talk about a guy called JC who you wanted to marry from an early age. He's a footballer. He plays for England. You end up hanging out with him. You don't, unfortunately, get married to him, but you do have an evening.
Still time.
There's still time. I don't know. I think you can do better.
I think you can do
better.
Married children.
But so this England footballer, you kind of become friends with him. Can we talk about the night?
Yes.
That he ends up at your childhood home, sleeping off a blackout, drinking session in your single childhood bed. And then Theo comes back and obviously doesn't like this.
Yeah, it's so mad to me. And one of my best friends who's in the book is Patsy. Her and I talk about this because she was there so much. And we are just like, could you imagine if something like that happened now? That would be insane.
So on a night out,
Embassy nightclub.
Okay.
And had been out with some of the Page 3 girls, had been partying, part of the England football team. And so they would always be in the same sort of nightclubs. And so I'd been on this night out, fun time, back in shots in the Embassy, and went to the bathroom, and everybody was leaving to go somewhere else. And I have no idea what time it was, but it was late. And when I came back out, everybody had left apart from JC, who was completely intoxicated.
Right. And this was like 3 or 4 days before an England international, wasn't it?
I mean,
I think it was quite soon before.
I feel like it was coming up. The World Cup was coming up.
The World Cup was a couple of weeks out.
It was
something.
a couple of weeks out. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's crazy because also football players then would go out and party. And I don't think that happens anymore. I don't think this same scene that happened in the noughties exists.
Yeah, it was quite wild, wasn't it?
It was wild. And so leave the club, and JC is drunk and I am trying to go home. He had lost his wallet and jumped in with me, and I ended up taking him back to my house, which was a council home in southeast London. And I ended up putting him to bed because he was so drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And then I immediately left and called Patsy and was like, hey, you'll never guess, my one celebrity crush is in my bed. And she came over, and then Theo, who's my boyfriend at the time, came over to collect his car that was outside. And when he found out, he went up to the room. He goes in there and just, whilst he's asleep, punches in.
Beats the shit out
of him.
It's a good story, Keeley. And then, sorry, I shouldn't laugh because it's obviously violent. But he then escapes out. You say that in that moment, you see JC come to and get the fuck out of there. And you see why JC's a footballer and Theo isn't.
Yes.
The speed
of him. I mean, I do wonder what would happen had he not got out of there.
He wouldn't have been playing in that World Cup. But he did end up on the front page of the newspaper. I mean, this was a big story at the time.
Yeah.
But what wasn't a big story, I mean, like, this is where my heart breaks, because behind it is this just awful story of a really deeply abusive relationship that you were in. The levels of abuse and like emotional violence that Theo subjected you to, really fucking awful. And I'm just really sorry that all happened to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's looking at it from like this standpoint, like I am just like, wow, it's crazy that I ended up in that relationship, but also at the same time, it isn't. It makes so much sense to me, given my history, to end up there. But it is the one relationship that really just changed the entire course of my life because of everything that happened with him after that. And yeah, it's
he broke into your house. He threatened you. He hurt you physically, didn't he?
He didn't, apart from slapping me around the face there is no, like, he was never beating me up. There was
but
no
slapping
like
you around, like that in itself, I think the boundary has been crossed.
Yes.
You know? And there was violence around it because you had another boyfriend, an ex-boyfriend who was his friend, who threw a bottle at you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had one boyfriend, my drug dealer boyfriend, who was best friends and business partners with Theo. And we had dated for about 1.5 years and then broke up. He broke up with me when I started modeling for Page 3. And so there was a lot of, when he found out and he saw us together in a bar in Bromley, then throws a sort of glass bottle at my face.
Not at Theo's face,
no.
At your face.
Yeah. Yes.
Obviously, you're the one in the wrong.
Yes.
This is the theme that runs through the book, is that you, like, I feel like, and I think this is like similar for a lot of us as women, is that life is like this series of events where we wake up and go, what the fuck? Why have I put up with this? Why did I normalize this? Just huge injustices and inequalities that exist constantly for women. I mean, you talk about, men, actors who, you've been out with, who they don't have to question with each professional engagement whether that person wants to fuck them or, what they want out of them.
Yes.
They don't have to go in on that level. Whereas you constantly, and I think it's the same for a lot of women, whether they've worked in show business, whether everyone's seen their tits or not, they have to factor in that question,
Yes. Yeah, and I think for me too, like talking about like my exes or the violence and stuff, it's like, it's not, the question being a woman, which is like, why didn't you leave, being that ultimate question that people always ask in those situations. And I think that even if you do, you're still running into that violence with other men. Like it's not just these two people. it's like that happens. And like you said, I think it's like at any point of being a woman in any industry, you're coming up against men and, you know, the patriarchy and just violence or having to question what their motives are. Like
It's a kind of violence that just exists in the air, right? Like it doesn't,
yes.
And I mean, the biggest act of violence I think that you really experience comes after he leaves and he sells this intimate tape of the two of you to a newspaper. And that to me is, you know, we now would call it revenge porn, and he nowadays would have been prosecuted and probably sent to prison. But at the time, it's like you're sort of, it's almost like you've committed, like not you've committed the crime, but it's like, why are you complaining about this?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, which is so hard. I think that was like, I mean, there's so many hard things to deal with in that situation, but one of them being that everybody, you know, and not everybody, using that as a hyperbole, is like the consensus, what does it matter? You like get your tits out. Like why is this an issue? Nobody sees it as a sort of act of violence, maybe is that one, sexual violence of some sort. And so it's really difficult to deal with mentally because you're like, okay, I guess this thing happened to me and now I'm having to prove firstly that it wasn't me. There was that element. It's like,
you were having to prove that it wasn't you that had released the sex tape.
Yeah.
So you made a kind of innocent camcorder thing with Theo on a holiday.
Yeah.
Kept it somewhere and you know, and after he'd left and he'd broken into your house and taken things and left and carved slut into the door.
Yes. He actually didn't take the tape then.
No, but he'd already
taken it, which was really hard for me when I figured that out. That we were in a relationship and he had a key to my apartment, you know, he pretty much lived there. And so when I was away working, he had searched the entire apartment, found it, because he knew that I had hidden it and we'd spoken about it. He was like, I don't want to be blamed if this goes missing. And he found it and took it somewhere and copied it. And then he put it back. And he had it just in the back of his mind or his back pocket for whatever reason, and as he had said multiple times during then, if I was to fuck up, it was like he had a little plan for me, and that was the plan. And so this happens, and also I just found out that he'd been cheating on me at Christmas, and then the tape came out in Jan. I think it was like, you know, I don't remember the exact date, but it was like early January. And so I was dealing with the sort of heartbreak of this relationship and finding out he'd been cheating on me this whole time and trying to make a decision of not being with him any longer and breaking my own patterns of addiction. And then here comes this tape, so I was already still dealing with the heartache and the pain of the relationship. And then that came out and it was like, oh my God.
Violation.
Complete violation, yes. And yeah.
And you talk about an addiction, you know, this is, and people don't actually often call this out or talk about it, but there are a lot of love addiction where you literally felt addicted to this man. Like you couldn't live without him, despite all the evidence that he was bad for you. You couldn't leave him. I mean, this is addiction, right?
Yes. 100%. And I say, having been in 12-step programs, I am an addict and I understand addiction in a few ways. Like I don't have a problem with alcohol, and when I hear alcoholics speak, and I say this in the book, but I know it. It's this feeling of, I know this person and I know everything they're doing is so horrible, and yet it's impossible to leave. You can't walk away. And it is essentially a drug. It's the same thing. It's the same sort of response an alcoholic has to alcohol. It's like they pick up a drink and they can't stop. And that was the exact same feeling I had with him. It was complete love addiction of just, and there were so many moments, and especially after he beat up JC, it was like, oh, that's a moment when I could have left.
Yeah.
And there were so many other things in between that just didn't make the book because it was just too much, that I also could have left. I was like, oh, he's gone to meet a journalist to sell a story on me. But he would then lie and say, well, I was going to rob the journalist. I'm like, oh, well, that's totally fine. He was going to rob the journalist. It's okay. Like, I can totally still be with him. And I think that that's also so scary as like in the mind of an addict is, and I'm sure you're aware of you being in 12-step, it's you delude yourself. It's just to stay in and have the connection to them is wild.
It's a sickness, isn't it? It really is a sickness. And I think that, God, yeah, when you describe it like that, it is, it's terrifying. It's totally terrifying. And I felt really terrified for you reading the book. I felt that just the horror and the of how it, in a way, I feel like the sex tape thing was, it was obviously I think if we're going to talk, if we have the kind of addict story and we talk about a rock bottom, that was the moment where you knew that things had to change in your life.
Yes, 100%. If we're looking at that lens, it was the rock bottom. And I always think of this moment of when I found out about the tape and I went to the newsagents and I got a copy and then I take it outside and I throw up and I sit down on the floor after with the newspaper just sort of blowing over and it's like the one memory that always sticks is just that moment of being there and it being so windy, and I was in Canary Wharf where I was living, which is horrible, and just it feeling like somebody had hit me with a brick, like they were throwing. It was just like, I felt like I was being hit with bricks. And that was the rock bottom. It was like this, like now I can't go back to this man at all ever again. And yeah, that was it, just being like, okay, something in me also, like, and there's my part in this in terms of being the addict and not being able to leave the relationship. And it's like, I need to, what is that? Why? And, I think this is in the book. When I start therapy, when I was 18, one of the things I wrote was like, I don't understand why I constantly need a man in my life. Like, what is that about me that is being drawn to these men and can't leave them? But yeah, that was definitely the rock bottom.
I mean, you're having panic attacks. Can you explain to everyone, like, what the options that were given to you when you were like, this sex tape now exists, it's on the front page of a newspaper and it's on the internet. What are my options? Because that was seriously depressing, that what you were told by these other men, lawyers, that there was nothing you could do, really.
Yeah, so there was two options. They presented me with two options. And also I think I was so young that I didn't quite understand how law worked or the system worked in terms of like, I didn't have to pick these two options. Like, I could say, I'm going to take this to court and keep fighting it. But then again, the system at the time it wasn't even named. It wasn't
a crime at the time.
It wasn't a crime. It was the crime with no name. And revenge porn, it was coined many years after that. But the two options they presented me was, one, to take a percentage of the royalties and continue to sell the tape. And then the other one was they would stop selling the tape and they would, give me the tiniest bit of money. And so that was it. It was like, you can continue to sell it. And also as part of that option, it was like, but we'll also say you're not a part of it. So you can deny that you're still selling it, but you will sell it and earn, a certain amount of the royalties.
Right, okay. And you, that you chose.
Yeah, I chose the not so financially smart option in hindsight, but
You chose the way of integrity.
I chose the way of integrity. Yeah. Yeah, which poor alone in my integrity. But
No, but it's incredible because, you know, actually all of the options, everything was stacked against you.
yeah.
And you were like, I'm not gonna have this exist out there.
Yes. But knowing that it would still exist, and that was the hard factor, because it's like you have this other option and they were like, we'll seek to control the internet. We'll seek to control any other website that is hosting this video and get it taken down. So they were going to have, you know, a team of lawyers controlling it. And so that in some ways was like, oh, well, they can contain it. And this other option is like it's just going to be available for everybody and or online. And so in choosing the option that I did, which was like, you can't continue to sell this, it was like, well, now I'm going to be dealing with the internet. And I'm not too sure if I thought in that moment that maybe I could just, you know, quickly put like a plug on it. And that maybe if I acted fast enough, it would just stop spreading. I'm not too sure that that thought even came to my mind. For me, it was just like, I'm not going into business with these people. I don't care. Like this is awful. And what's happened to me should not be allowed. And I didn't want to make money from it. It was like, I'm not going to make money from the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. And then many years later, I went in moments, I was like, maybe I should have just made money, and then it would have made the experience easier because of all the trauma that it caused. I was like, maybe that would have been the better option, is to just really have monetized it. And then the flip side is, would I have lived with myself in that choice? And that in the moment was the one thing that I was like, I won't be able to live with myself if I make the choice to sell it. I just don't know how I'll continue with that.
Yeah.
I think when you write a book though, because you go through these experiences and then you can contain what it is that you went through versus like actually actively speaking the story.
Yeah.
That feels so different. I definitely feel like when I got to the end of the book that I was like, wow, I'm free from all of this that felt like it has been a burden and a trauma that I have been carrying. And I've put it somewhere, and now the whole world is open to me in like some weird and magical way because I've shut this part of my life.
Let's talk about writing, because this is the twist to the story that I just fucking love, right? Which is that you moved to LA to become an actress.
Yeah.
But you've sort of, I mean, people will know you now from Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Which you starred in, but also, I can never pronounce his surname, Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah.
And the other, it created a character in Ted Lasso that's basically based on you.
Yes.
Keeley.
Yes.
Who is the former Page 3 girl who's now business brains. You were his inspiration for that character.
Yeah, so the part was written for me to play myself in the show. And this was before the show had been sold. It was like they had been working on this script and this concept and this idea. And the part was written for me to play me.
You'd met Jason while filming, was it Horrible Bosses?
Yes.
Okay.
Horrible Bosses 2.
So
and we had met on set and had, sat next to each other for many hours and had quite deep conversations about feminism and how I felt like I was being viewed because I was sitting there in like a swimsuit. And he wrote the part, which is Keeley, for me to play myself in the world of Ted Lasso that exists in the football world, because I had also been around football players once or twice. And so I was involved from before it was sold, and I read the script and I gave notes and was like, well, Keeley doesn't sound like that. She obviously says this.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took it out, they pitched it, and it got sold, which was fantastic news. It was like, oh my God, this show's going to be made and I'm going to play myself, which is weird, but I'm here for it. Like, I'm going to be an actress and this is my moment. Like, this is it. Like, I am not going to be called a page 3 or a glamour model ever again. I am an actress.
Hollywood went, hold that thought, Keeley.
Yes. And they went, hold that a second. We know an actress who has a bigger resume. And they went out on a direct offer to her and offered her the part, which
she took. And she played Keeley.
And
that's a pretty tough moment in your life.
Yeah. Yes. As tough moments go, I would say it's up there as one of the tougher moments in my adult life.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think for so many reasons. I had given, and I write about this in a book, I was in a relationship and that came to an end, and that was like 2019. And part of the reason for that relationship breaking down was me still wanting to have my own career. And I was like, I've given 10 years of my life to being an actress. Like, I need to complete this. Like, I need to do it. And
he wanted you to go and be a wife and mother kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for him, and I just love this term, trad wife, so much. It's like my favorite term. He was looking for sort of a trad wife.
Right. And you were not going to be that person.
I wasn't going to be that. And that was totally fine. Like, I think he's married now and I'm so happy for him. And just for me, it was like, that's not who I am. So much of my identity is tied up in work. And so this moment, the moment of the part of Keeley, just felt like everything had really fallen. Like, I hadn't been auditioning and I just needed a break. Like that one break, the one thing that would put me on the map. And so when it didn't happen, that dream was so shattered. And then just like kind of everything, then like having somebody play a version of me on TV and watching that and watching the show become so successful and the actress becoming so successful for playing me, it just was really, really difficult.
Mindfuck. And let's just say you did still end up starring in Ted Lasso, just not as yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in the show. I forget that I'm in the show most of the time.
You are in the show. I've watched it and you are in the show, Keeley. And you play the wife of the guy that we were describing it earlier as the wife of the guy who was in Buffy.
Yeah, exactly.
Who buys West Ham.
Yeah. He's great. He's amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
But so you did end up in the show and you've like been in the writer's room and stuff.
Yeah.
That's not nothing.
No, for sure it's not.
Okay, but I think that, you write about this in the book. You say that actually now you are playing the version of Keeley you were always meant to play,
Yes. Because I think in so many ways, even if I had played that Keeley, I'm still playing somebody else's version of Keeley than my own. Like, it's still created by someone else. It was still, 4 men that created the show that control this character. And so I do think, like, I've always like played that out as well. Like, oh, if I had played that, would there just be resentment anyway that somehow I'm playing this again? I was like, I've had to play this version of Keeley on page 3 for years. And
the version that Theo created for you by releasing a sex tape without your consent.
Exactly. So I've always been playing a version of Keeley that has been created by someone else. And so I think in many ways that would have been hard to just be in it and be like, oh, I'm still playing somebody and I can't control that. I wouldn't have had control over what happens or to that version of Keeley.
But now you have. Everyone's seen my tits. And now we've seen the real Keeley.
We've seen the real Keeley.
And what a babe she is.
Just about to say, I don't know if she's as popular as the other versions of
I
Keeley.
love this. Can I just say, I love this version of Keeley. And I think everyone who gets to know this version of Keeley through Everyone's Seen My Tits is going to love this version of Keeley. And I think there is wonder and joy, and there's a lot more to come on your journey. And I am excited to see it and to read about it in your words, not anyone else's.
Well, thank you so much.
I loved that chat with Keeley. I could have spoken to her for days and days. And I loved how she just point blank refused to conform to the narratives and the judgments that have been thrown her way. She reminds us, doesn't she, that we always get to be the authors of our own scripts, whatever anyone else might try to say. And they often try to say quite a lot. Keeley, she's silenced her naysayers, hasn't she? Anyway, if this conversation made you think differently about your own story or gave you a bit of hope, send it to a friend who might appreciate it.